Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to share the results of a project that really captures what collaboration in the sector can really look like. It's been a genuine partnership between Ofcom, the DTG, and our fantastic colleagues at i2 Media, research at Goldsmiths, bringing together policy, insight, technical know-how, and human-centered research. And most importantly, I want to begin by thanking the wonderful people who volunteered to take part in our usability trials. They let us into their lives and let us observe and test the way they use and experiment with TVs. And they taught us an enormous amount. And there's nothing like using real people for this. They gave us some far more valuable data points than we're able to share with you today, and true insight into how older audiences experience television in this kind of wonderful world that we live in today. I also want to thank the brilliant technology team for all the hard work that they did at Ofcom, and I think we've got some very interesting results for you today. So what's all this about? At its heart, our goal was simple but ambitious: to make sure that television moves online in a way that everyone can come with it. We wanted to understand the real world challenges the older and less confident users have when navigating TV of today, but also as we look forward into internet delivered TV, and to see whether thoughtful human-centered design could make a measurable difference. Across three phases, and that's exactly what we did. First, we tested existing TVs with real users to understand where people struggle, their behaviours, and why. And we co-designed fixes based on what they told us. And finally, we built a low-cost working prototype, the TV Simple Screen, and tested it again with the same people. And the outcome was remarkable. Confidence and independence rose dramatically. The gap between the least and the most capable users effectively disappeared. And here's the striking thing: none of this required expensive tech, just simple, thoughtful design changes. And Emma will take you through some of that shortly. Clearer layouts, consistent controls, plain language, and feedback that reassures the viewer, removing any anxiety they may have had when they're trying to navigate TV. What we also discovered was inspiring. Older people weren't resistant or disengaged. They were curious, creative, and genuinely excited by the possibilities. I'll leave Emma to share with you some of the exciting points that come out from that. So this isn't just about accessibility features, although clearly it helps. But it was about ensuring that everyone can enjoy the experience of TV in a really comfortable way. It's about designing better products for everyone. It's about inclusion, usability, and ultimately dignity for the viewers. This work shows that inclusive design isn't a constant, it's a catalyst for innovation. And we very much, being the DTG, are very, very keen to work with our members to ensure that they use these findings to improve things in the market and continue to improve things as things innovate and develop online. So with that, I'll hand over to Emma, who will take us through the findings using our Smile More framework, a set of practical principles that show how simplicity, clarity, and empathy can transform digital television for everyone. Emma.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Before I get started, just to say that I think we've got a chat box and a Q&A box open, so please do feel free to throw any questions that you might have into those, or any comments or whatever, and we'll endeavour to get to those at the end of the session. So don't forget those are there. So thank you very much indeed for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here on the part of the research team to share some of our findings with you. As Richard said, our aim was quite straightforward. So looking to understand why older people might struggle, and to see whether user-centered design could do something about that. So in phase one, we worked with 30 people aged between 65 and I think 89 was the oldest participant. Many of them had mild sight, hearing or dexterity challenges, some of them showing a degree of cognitive decline. And we asked them to carry out some everyday tasks on two common smart TV systems. So things as listed on the slide there, like watching TV, browsing, searching, turning on subtitles, operating volume, that sort of thing. And we observed where they hit barriers. And it's super important that we did this through observation. So we didn't survey them. We literally sat there and watched them so we could really identify the challenges that they were coming across. What we found was that there was a real combination of human factors, so physical and psycho. Where did I got to? I think I was talking about in phase one, we'd worked with 30 people aged between 65 and just shy of 90. We asked them to carry out those common smart TV actions, so things like watching live TV, browsing, searching, and so on. And we found quite a range of barriers. So some of them were to do with the human condition, so physical and psychological capacities and their limitations of users. But a lot of them were design decisions, or perhaps they were things that designers hadn't made a specific decision about, perhaps design oversights, which exacerbated the challenges that some of our users were having. Fabulous. We're on to slide 4, Will, if you can flick through. Based on some of those barriers that we found, we came up with Smile More, which is a framework to make sure that those design decisions kind of work with the human condition rather than against the human condition. I won't linger on this slide because we're going to go through some of the live examples later, but just to give you a bit of an overview. So next slide. What we found also, I think it's important to say, reinforced why this is all important. So why we as a society are not going to outgrow this challenge. And there's several reasons for that. Firstly, obviously technology keeps on evolving. So things that are possible now weren't possible 10 years ago, and in 10 years time, there will be new things again. And really, that goes hand in hand with the fact that as people age, then they often come across cognitive or sensory issues that they didn't previously have. And there are social changes as well around their support networks. And those things can erode both their confidence in their ability and also their actual ability to learn new things. So that can make it difficult for them to keep up with changes. We also found that, and perhaps this is a slightly more surprising thing, that digital literacy doesn't seem to be 100% transferable. So we found people who were great at using a smart TV, but had no idea about any other type of sort of digital interaction. And at the other end of the spectrum, we had people who were using internet banking and internet shopping and all sorts of other things, but actually weren't very confident with using a smart TV, wasn't what they were used to. And that sort of knowledge didn't necessarily readily transfer. And I think it's also worth mentioning that this is an area where there's a lack of equity. So some people have more support networks in terms of family and friends and so on to rely on and help them, and others have less. So this is going to continue being an issue that we need to face up to. So next slide. So in phase 2, we co-created some possible fixes, as Richard said, and DTG built a demonstrator. It was an overlay using Raspberry Pi and a programmable remote control that allowed us to simulate what an alternative design might look like and how it might work. So next slide. In phase 3, we brought together a group of those same participants. We brought them back into the lab to test the demonstrator. And next slide. The results were really striking. The number of barriers you can see on the screen, the pink bars are the number of barriers faced by users using the on the market systems, and the green bar is the number of barriers that they face performing the same task on our demonstrator. So you can see that the number of barriers faced at least halved in every circumstance, and in many cases was reduced much more than that. And then next slide. The result of that reduction in barriers was a real increase in the independence of our users. So more people were able to navigate and find the TV programs that they wanted to watch more independently with less support from the research team. So a really positive result. Next slide. So Ofcom's already published a full report, and it's quite lengthy, so we haven't got time to go into every last detail, but I've just picked out some of the key findings and looking at how we applied that Smile More framework and the results that we got from doing that. So next slide. So in our Smile More framework, S stood for simplify interactions. And really that means minimizing the steps and choices, making that route to key functions shorter, more direct, and also more forgiving. So what we did was we introduced the TV Simple screen, which was our demonstrator, alongside the TV interface. So it provided 4 clear shortcuts for those 4 use cases: watching live TV, browsing, searching, and getting help. And this screen was available at any time by pressing a button marked TV on the TV remote control. So it provided a real sort of shortcut. We didn't get rid of the TV interface, that was there as well. So this was alongside, not instead of. The difference it made, halved the number of barriers that people faced. It reframed the whole experience around the user's intent. So I'm coming to TV because I want to find something to watch now, or because I want to catch up on something that I missed 2 weeks ago, or whatever use case it is, rather than coming at it from the point of view of program makers or TV manufacturers or others. And I think it really helped people to grasp that difference between live and on-demand content, which was something that they struggled to do previously. So on to the next slide. Our next mark in the framework is M, for maintain consistency and permanence. So this is all about keeping controls and feedback really consistent across contexts, so that users know that they can really rely on familiar actions to get them to places that they expect. We noticed when we did the phase 1 that when users were stuck somewhere, which happened quite often, often the way that they tried to sort of recover was to press a channel number button on the remote control, because that was their safe place, their home. And that was fine when it worked, but it often didn't work because the number buttons don't work in all contexts. They don't work if you're in an app and so on. So in the spirit of maintaining that consistency, we took that existing habit and pattern and we decided to make that really consistent. So we introduced number buttons that were fully functional from any starting point. The result of that was really clear. It built trust and independence because people knew that they could always get back. They felt more safe to explore, and we had a 100% success rate of people being able to navigate around the TV. So next slide. The next point is I for improving learning support, and this is a really simple one but very important. What we found was that the very first barrier to access with existing systems wasn't content or anything like that. It was actually just moving around the screen. So people didn't realise that the screen could be navigated. They didn't realise that the screen is effectively a window into a larger landscape, or how to sort of move around that. They struggled with which buttons to press and the fact that they needed to press the select buttons. So we introduced a really simple visual prompt, so you can see it kind of highlighted at the bottom of the screenshot on the slide at the moment, where we just indicated to people, press these buttons to move around and press the OK button to select, and that effectively became a sort of a mini tutorial, and it made a really big difference. So ability to use arrow keys rose from 60% to 100%, and users described it as a really clear and calm and easy experience. And of course, once people had mastered that, then other tasks followed naturally on. On to the next slide. This is a really super important one, lower cognitive load. So this is all about reducing the sort of visual and mental clutter that users experience, so that they could focus on their clear goal and how to get there. And I think this is important because it's a little bit ironic that we talk about home screens, whether that's in app or whether that's on the TV interface. But what we found was from our users was that it felt anything but homely. It felt less like a home and more like a crowded marketplace with vendors yelling at them from the side streets. And they felt quickly quite disorientated by all of that. So what we did was replace that busy shop front with the home screen that I shared a few moments ago, a really simple sort of plain screen. It looks probably quite stark to most of us, but to most of our users, it felt much more familiar and homely. And it really meant that users were able to orientate themselves more quickly and to find things in a much more straightforward way, and it improved their confidence and reduced their errors. Next slide. So the next item in the Smile More framework is E for ensure familiarity. And that means really working on retaining recognizable conventions so that existing knowledge can be transferred to new situations. So this one was a bit more of a challenge to implement through the project because we were able to tweak certain things, but we weren't able to do a full sort of rebuild. So what we did was a series of quite small things. What we were able to do was we observed that users, when they were stuck, they didn't necessarily try and navigate the screen. One of their first reactions was to look at the remote control and try and find a button on the remote control that fixed their problem. And so we introduced the TV button, which got them straight back to this TV simple screen. As I mentioned before, we had universal number buttons, and we tried to use user-focused language. So we didn't have find on demand content or find a BVOD app. We didn't use the word app. We said search for program because that's what users are trying to do. So the results of this certainly improved understanding, but it did highlight that there is further need for user input to sort of help to kind of refine that, and particularly around use of language. That's a really important one that we need to do a little bit more work on, but we can start to see the sort of green shoots on this one. So really positive start. On to the next slide. So M in the framework is make navigation flexible. So this really is about ensuring that there's more than one way to reach the same goal, so that if a user goes off down a perhaps slightly unexpected path, they're still able to get where they want to get to. And this was inspired really by watching the way that channel number entry works really well on most existing TVs. And we noticed that whether our user pressed 1 digit, whether they pressed 2, 3 or 4 digits, whether they pressed the select button or not after they'd done that, all of those things worked and got them to a named channel number. So we wanted to emulate the success of that approach. So for us, that really just meant having multiple routes to meet user goals. So they were able to use TV Simple, they were able to use the original TV interface home screen, they were able to use voice search, they were able to use typed search. All of those things got them to where they wanted to go. And the result of that was that if one path failed, another one worked, and that created that all-important safety net so that they could explore and feel more confident, and so that they didn't feel that they got stuck in a blind alley somewhere. So next slide. On to offer clear feedback. So this is about giving immediate, unambiguous sort of confirmation of user actions. And this is a pretty intuitive, sort of straightforward one, but we added very clear visual highlights around selections. So in the TV Simple screen, you can see top right at the moment, the button is very clearly highlighted. It's blue, it's got a red outline. We had audio feedback as well. So when people moved, there was a tone when they moved from button to button. And when they selected a button, there was actually a voice prompt which confirmed the option that they had selected. And that was really important because if they selected the wrong thing by mistake, they would notice that because it would read out the option that they had selected. So just helped help them to understand where they were and to orientate themselves. It really sort of reduced hesitation and just made a smoother sort of flow through menus and just less confusion about, oh, where am I? What am I selected on at the moment? So super important. We're nearing the end now. Next one is remove physical barriers. And that really is around sort of designing so that things like limited dexterity or vision or hearing doesn't block key tasks. One really good example was from phase 1 was that users struggled with and largely absolutely hated text input into searches. And I suspect that older people are not the only people who have that reaction. So we introduced a more straightforward voice search so that they didn't have to go through the sort of painstaking task of entering a typed search in, and that really simplified the input. It made it much easier for people with dexterity challenges, but also for all users really. And that made a big difference. So access to on-demand apps increased from 25% of people able to do that independently to 40% of people able to do that independently. And the scale of the challenge that those who still had help was much reduced. And people really welcomed it. So this was probably my favourite quote from the whole experience. If my TV had this, I'd use it until the button wore out. And I think you can't have much greater endorsement than that. So moving on, the final point in our Smile More framework is E for enable seamless control. And that's all about allowing users to move kind of fluidly between functions and to recover easily from mistakes. So really making a kind of continuous joined up experience. So that's what we did. We focused on joining things up and easy switching between live, on demand, TV number buttons, TV simple, and so on. Users were able to sort of flow between those things, and because they could always go back to the TV button on TV simple, it meant that they didn't really get stuck anywhere. So it just reduced the need for assistance. But I think this point is around taking that sort of overarching view. How do you connect everything up? So next slide. So it was pretty clear that users found the demonstrator much more straightforward to use. And many of them sort of talked about, we had people who were with us who were in their 70s, who perhaps still had a parent with us in their 90s, and they were talking about, my mum would find this much more straightforward as well, and I could really see myself using this, and so on. So really positive reaction to it. And then next slide. So we weren't able to test all the solutions that we came up with when we were brainstorming and workshopping for phase 2, and also some new avenues emerged through the phase 3 research that we did. So just to share very quickly those. So next slide. You could actually tap through all of them and they'll all appear on screen at the same time. But it's important, I think, to think about speaking the user's language, and this is something that we could definitely have done with doing more of had we had a longer time frame for the research. Some of the words that we used perhaps weren't as easily recognised as we hoped that they might be. So it's really important to use those kind of familiar metaphors, everyday terms that map to users' existing kind of mental models. It's no good talking about on demand. You might need to talk about, this is everything that's ever been recorded, ready for you to watch, something along those lines. Contextual prompts came up as something which would be well worth exploring. So we had a help tutorial, but it kind of included everything that they might need help with. And it became clear from observing users that it would be much more useful to have just small snippets of help just to overcome a barrier when they hit it, rather than sort of giving them a manual with how to do every last task. So giving them help only when they need it at the sort of point of need. Looking at step-by-step onboarding, so gradual introductions, and also the sort of idea of being able to scaffold people to give them the support that they need, and then perhaps to remove some of that scaffolding when they no longer need it, so that we're able to transition them more into mainstream sort of services. Definitely worth exploring. Slightly surprising to me was that the older people that we worked with, for the most part, were really interested in use of AI and machine learning to generate better, smarter, more personal recommendations. And for the most part, they did not seem to be too concerned about sort of data gathering and that kind of thing, provided it meant that they had a better experience. So they wanted that as a way of surfacing programming that might suit them based on their preferences and viewing habits. And finally, it was really clear throughout the project that to most people, TV is a friend in their living room. And so a move towards a more conversational TV and using voice and AI interfaces that feel really natural is something that most of our users would really welcome. So on to, I think, the next slide. So I think just a few sort of snippets from some of our users. For me, I think the takeaway is that This isn't about making kind of edge case accessibility tweaks. It's about design principles that could be used across the board to benefit everybody, to keep audiences connected as TV keeps evolving. And the changes that we make that make TV more accessible to older viewers, those with dexterity challenges, sensory challenges, and so on, tend to benefit all viewers. So I think by putting that sort of user, their use cases, and just the human condition at the heart of design, there's a really exciting opportunity to make TV work very well for everyone. So thanks very much. If you haven't yet had access to the full report, the QR code, which is on screen now, will take you through to the full version of the report on the Ofcom website. So do bookmark that.
Emma, thank you very much. And I'm conscious that it was a great deal of work, both the design, testing, and reporting on this project. And there was a lot of things that we, as you mentioned, we really weren't able to test. Clearly, we weren't able to design within the scope of the project AI help systems, etc. And I'm sure there's a wealth of things that we can do to take it forward. We have time for some questions. If anyone has any questions, please let us know. Lydia.
I don't know that we can unmute participants.
I've just unmuted Lydia.
Oh, well done, you can.
She's muted again.
Oh.
There's some good questions in the Q&A that haven't been answered yet, Emma, if you wanted to take a look at those on the Q&A tab.
Lydia, I'm trying to allow your mic. Maybe you need to unmute as well. There we go. Can you unmute?
No. Maybe tap into the chat box.
Yeah, maybe drop it in the chat, Lydia, and we'll address it.
Yes, I did it.
We've got you.
Yes.
Hello, Lydia.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you so much for this wonderful report, and to whoever came up with doing this work, and to just test the users, but also to come up with almost simple design, because it's an answer to mine and my colleagues in the National Association of Deaf and People prayers, basically. So we're very, very grateful for that. One of the screams we've been doing for quite a few months, years actually now, is the disappearance of the subtitle button in the remote controls. I have no idea who came up with this genius idea, but it wasn't a genius idea. So hopefully this will feed back to the manufacturers of televisions and basically a plea, please bring back the button. It really is important, that important. And I also like very much the mention in the fact that you were working also especially with older people, because we know when it comes to hearing loss, 1 in 3 over 65 has the hearing loss. So they will be relying on subtitles, the biggest group after all. And definitely complications. I mean, even myself, I am quite adapt when it comes to the technology, getting a new TV and learning how to get your subtitles permanently switched on. It's a nightmare sometimes, you have to really navigate a lot. One thing I would like to see, if it is possible as part of this guidance, and I'm wondering how it can be rolled out and what kind of implication can be from this study, is, I know that Richard will be banging, our banner and saying, make it simple, because it's important. But at the same time, I'm just wondering, for example, when it comes to streaming providers, sometimes it's not too difficult to activate subtitle button in streaming services. But my pet hate little bit is Amazon Prime. It takes quite a few steps in Amazon Prime to know, actually going through the information and all of that, to know if the subtitles actually are in that title. And sometimes still people buy the title hoping that it's got subtitles, and they discover that they actually do not have subtitles there. So I'm wondering how we can together collectively improve those things, and I do believe this is a very good example of how it can be also fed back into the European Accessibility Act. From my perspective. Thank you.
Lydia, thank you. There's a lot there. Just very, very briefly, Amazon are a member of the DTG and will definitely feed that back. We're also feeding all of this into both our accessibility group, but hopefully we'll get this into the U-book. And we hope to do further work as well. And we're working really closely with our media minister on this as well. So everything you've said, we will do our very best to take forward. I'm conscious we haven't answered some of the questions in the chat, Emma, and if there's any that you particularly want to take.
I'm just kind of scanning through. Let's just go from the bottom up. So David Holiday asked about whether the second round testing was all exclusively people who took part in the first round. Yes, it was. So we were able to sort of compare that and get their views on how things had changed. Then what else have we got here? So Nigel's saying, did we consider arranging the TV simple screen so that the 4 boxes were in a diamond pattern, matching the up, down, left, right pattern of the arrow keys? We didn't, but that's that was more down to the sort of limited technical kind of capacity we had to actually sort of design things on screen. But I think that's a really interesting point. Certainly mirroring what's on the remote control and what's on the screen is something which we would expect to have a really positive impact. What we did do was, in the little tutorial section at the bottom of that screen where we asked people to use the arrow keys, the graphic of the arrow keys was designed to match what the arrow keys looked like on the TV remote. So that was something that we considered, but yeah, that would definitely be worth exploring. Nigel also asked about what users' expectations were with the number keys. So did they always expect it to switch to a live TV channel? Yes, they did, in short. And did anyone expect 888 to switch subtitles on or off? Not within the sample of people that we had. No, to go back to what Lydia was saying, they absolutely expected there to be a button on the remote marked subtitles. And if that wasn't present, then they were left quite confused. We were quite surprised by people's capacity to know 3-digit channel numbers for channels that were close to their hearts. So people did know the channel numbers for Sky News, and Al Jazeera News was another one that was quite popular, and a couple of other channels that they were particularly keen on. So really good sort of recall of numbers there. What else have we got in here?
There was Louise's question about reducing cognitive load, and was there any insight into whether access to these services was on screen. I'm not sure we really went into that much depth, and I don't think we went into that much depth on the kind of high contrast settings, etc. But there is a lot of research on that already, I think, but we could certainly build on that.
Yeah. I think I suppose, to sort of zoom out slightly, I guess, if anybody's old enough and was interested in website design in the early 2000s, there was a lot of focus at that time on website navigation. And to my mind, there's actually a lot of overlap between that scenario and TV navigation. And at that time, people were talking about, is it best to have a very wide navigation system, i.e. there's loads of options to pick from at any one time, and therefore you can get to your desired destination within 2 or 3 clicks, because you make your selection, you make your next selection, you're there? Or is it better to have a narrow and deep navigation, so you only get a couple of options at a time, and each time it's a very simple, quick choice to make, and then you move on to the next level, but you might have to click quite a few times to get to your end answer? And I think it would be very interesting to sort of drill into that idea and do a bit more research to see how that sort of reflects and applies in this setting. Certainly from observing people, the more options that they had available, the more difficult they found it to make a decision. And it seems likely to me that having that narrow, deep approach where people don't have too many options to choose from, but then they could just keep on going, making decisions, might help people to more comfortably get where they want to go to.
Excellent. Thank you, Emma, and thanks again to the team that worked on this. A lot of hard work went into it, and there's more detail in the project, but there's also a vast amount of detail that we haven't published, and hopefully we will be taking not just the findings from this phase forward into the U-Book and into the market, but also extending the project so that we can look at some of the things that were raised today, but many of the things that we found and solutions we identified that we were unable to test. What we have seen from today is proof that inclusive design works. It's not niche, and it makes products better for everyone. And we've shared this. We've had an awful lot of interest in this project from across the piece in our sector, and so I'm very confident that it's going to be embraced warmly by the industry. Small human-centered changes halved the usability barriers and transformed the experience from the people that had previously struggled. And it was really quite inspiring to work with these people. They loved doing the project, incidentally. They were a great bunch, and they kind of keen to come back and do more. And it was, you know, from something that was potentially caused anxiety to people navigating complex interfaces. Actually, we flipped their mindsets very much so. You know, thank you so much to the researchers and the teams that worked on this, and we will do more work. Draw your attention to the Smile More framework, because that gives us a shared language for what this means in practice. To simplify, maintain consistency, support learning, reduce overload and reduce physical barriers is super important. And the opportunity is huge. If we embed these principles into mainstream product designs, not just as add-ons, but as the default, we can reach wider audiences, strengthen public value, build lasting trust as television moves into this all IP world. And I'm sure, like many of you, we're very much at the centre of what we do with the future of TV. And I don't think we can have an inclusive all IP world unless we fix the usability challenges and implement many of the findings of this research. So for industry, this is a moment to lead, to show that inclusive design isn't just about doing the right thing. It's commercially really smart. And I know there's a balance between complex commercial features and making things super simple. And I think we can strike that balance and probably need to do a little bit more work on doing that. It grows audiences, builds loyalty, and makes services easier for everyone to use. So our call to action is really simple. Let's take this evidence and act on it now together. Let's make sure that we impact quickly the user experiences in the market. Let's share the best practice, test against common standards, and make usability the foundation of our future television systems. Because the tools exist now and the evidence is clear, and to be frank, the audience is ready. We had a lot of moments of anxiety with our candidates and moments of absolute sheer joy. The one guy that accidentally found the voice search and felt that was going to change his life at home went from a dreadful look of anxiety on his face to sheer joy. So I think by allowing users to dip their toe in easily to future TV experiences, making sure that they feel comfortable, they'll then embrace the more interesting, more complex, richer experiences that clearly we're keen from a digital inclusion perspective to bring them into as we develop. So thank you everyone for your time today. Sorry we had a few tech issues, blame Microsoft. And we look forward to engaging with you all further and developing things further. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, everyone. It's been fantastic to have all those questions, and we're really passionate about taking it forward. So if you've got any more questions or anything, then do get in touch with the team. We'd love to talk to you a bit more about it.
Thanks. Have a good afternoon.
Well done, Emma and Richard. Great presentation. Bye-bye.